Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am your host, Joe JDF Foster, and today we are discussing the movie Tales of Halloween. Now, before we get started, I'd like to say thank you for those who like and subscribe to my videos and leave comments. And if you would like for me to discuss something in an upcoming video, please feel free to leave me a note of some sort in the comments so that I can read them. And I will give you credit for the video, or at least for the discussion of the idea in the video. Now, on to this movie review. This movie came out in 2015, and it's an anthology film, meaning that it's a collection of tales rather than just one big overarching story. When I started to do this, I was going to list the cast, but since it's an anthology, and that means multiple stories, that means multiple cast members, and not all of them appear. I mean, almost none of them appear in the same in each other's stories, so there's no point in having them. The plot of the movie is that there's 10 stories that intersect with each other in some way. Mainly, it's an overarching deal where the stories all come together by the end of it. So, slight spoiler there, and I apologize. But by the end of it, they all do intersect in some way. Anyways, the first story in the movie is called Sweet, or at least I'm gonna give my name for them. I'm not sure if these are the actual names for it or not. The first one is called Sweet Tooth, and it's a kid who has to deal with a town legend about a kid who had a killer appetite for candy that turns into more than just legend. Next up on the list is Billy, or Halloween Pranks, where a kid named Billy learns about Halloween pranks following an attempt to egg an old man's house. Third story, Trick or Treat. A group's nice Halloween at home with candy and a movie is interrupted by a bunch of psycho killer children. Or is it? Next, number 4 on the list is Malice, where a boy seeks vengeance against a girl and her gang that killed his parents when they were kids. Number 5 on the list, Mary Bailey. This one actually kind of, in a way, reminded me of the whole Bloody Mary idea, in that a girl who scares easily deals with the legend of a disfigured woman who will rip out the eyes of those that see her. The reason why I say this reminds me of the Bloody Mary legend is that one of the legends of Bloody Mary is that if you said her name 3 times in a mirror, she would appear and rip out your eyes as a punishment because she was murdered. Number 6 on the list, I called it the wife, but I guess the witch or some other version of it could be said. But it's a man who deals with a woman who seems to have an issue with wanting to have children. Number 7, I gave it one name, but it also has another name. Because this one I actually did find the name for. I called it Halloween Wars. The actual name for it is This Means War. Its neighbors face off on Halloween over their displays that they've done for their houses in the neighborhood. Now, number 8, Killer, Escape, or Nothing as It Seems is what I gave it as a title. Because I'm not exactly sure how to explain the title. I'm not sure what a good title for this one would have been, because the idea is you open with a killer doing the traditional slasher film, and then he gets into it with an alien who's this little bitty cute thing to begin with, but by the end of it is a very dangerous. But during the film becomes very dangerous. Number 9 on the list, Kidnapped or Rusty. What appears to be a kidnapping by bank robbers turns into a nightmare when they take the wrong kid. And the 10th and final story in this is Jack-O-Lantern or Super Pumpkin, or the alternative title in my mind, McNally, where a pumpkin comes to life and attacks people in the town. And this one is the one that actually connects to the other stories in it, because it actually mentions what's happened in town, with how crazy Halloween is. Now on to some notes that I found interesting. Ben Wolf, the star of American Horror Story, season 1 and season 4, this was the final film before his death in 2015. Also, the story of Kidnapped or Rusty, if you watch the Being Human US version, US Canada version, the guy who plays the vampire in it, in the nice little trio, is actually in this one as a criminal. And it's actually really funny to see him do this role. Adrienne Barbeau role in this film is actually, because she plays a DJ, is actually an homage to the 1980s movie The Fog, where she played the exact same role of a DJ. The name of the candy bar that's used in Sweet Tooth is Carpenter, after director John Carpenter, well known in the horror film industry, especially if you are a fan of the Halloween movies. He did the very first one. Also, the original Night of the Living Dead could be seen running in the background of certain scenes, in certain stories. And as I stated earlier, there was a segment called Halloween Wars or This Means War. In that segment, it's actually been argued that it's a representation of the traditional horror from the 30s through the 70s versus what came later in the 80s to the modern day films, which includes in the current version Halloween, even though Halloween is a film came out in the 70s for its first film. Um, the lighter that was you. Okay, um in the in the segment where I'm trying to know how to phrase this correctly. Sorry, I'm tongue tied here. In the segment where in the segment of Malice, there's a lighter that's used. In the flashback, it's one of those where you flick up and it lights easily. But in the present, it shows a lighter being used. It's a basic bit. The problem is you couldn't use this lighter in the way they showed, where you light it and then throw it, because the way that light, the basics are set, when you light it, once you tossed it, it would have went out instantly because there's nothing holding it in place to keep it lit. And the final segment features a company called Clover Court, which could be seen as a reference to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, in which the company in it was Clover Court. Okay, the good thing. Okay, now for my final note, my final review of this film. 1, the good of it. It was to intertwine the stories to make it a better anthology rather than just, oh, hey, let's throw a random bunch of stories together and say that it's an anthology. And 2, the show used ideas for Halloween. There's scary stories told to kids, or they just are legends and ideas that were used to actually scare. It actually shows the idea of Halloween being done, whether it's through the idea of scary stories told to each other, people being mean to each other on Halloween, or some other form. Now for the bad. Some of these stories seemed like they stretched a bit in their ideas, or that they were trying too hard and actually ended up repeating some of the more well-known stories. And the jack-o'-lantern really did remind me of Halloween 3, even if it wasn't meant to. And my recommendation, though, this is a good Halloween movie, or if you're just looking for a movie for a night to do basic scares with the family, this would be a good one. Because there's no nudity, and despite what they say, they give it an R rating. I would have given it a PG-13 because language and blood are your biggest. The language and the blood are your biggest problems. There's not really any major issues that should have given it an R overall. And for my final grade, while it did have more good than bad, the bad does hurt it well enough that I can't give it an A rating, and I can't give it a high B. So my overall rating is a flat out B. But I do recommend that this film gets watched. So, till next time, have fun.